If you haven't watched our previous lesson in the VOD channel for Twitch TV, make sure to check it out. Right now we're going to be doing part 2. This is going to be slightly... We'll kind of go over we'll quickly go over what we went over last time, which was about, of course, the EMAs and all the wonderful little things you can do with EMAs. If you haven't seen our EMA, it's the naked fractal. You can do 2 things. You can go to indicators. You can type in 2 things. You can type in new color. If you type in new color, COLOR, you can find the fractal, the 9 EMA fractal. Doesn't matter which one you use. Of course, we also have, if you type in naked EMAs, you also will find the naked EMA fractals. They're the same thing, just one's branded to ours. So if you're looking for EMAs, make sure to check it out there. Let me turn off some of the other things here that aren't relatively too important. The next lesson after this one, we're going to be going over Keltner channels. I'm hoping to do that this week. Or, yeah, I'm thinking we'll do 2 this week, because this is like, this is going to be a very fast, relatively fast EMA lesson. But, the next one that we're going to be doing will probably be Keltner channels, with maybe a mix of Ichimoku clouds, because I know you guys have been asking for Ichimoku clouds for a hot minute. So, that's where it is with that. Okay, so... The most important, when it comes to EMAs, as we know, coming in from the last stream, the baby blue one is the 100 EMA, the red one is the 200 EMA, and we talked about the importance of the 100 EMA, and we can even kind of see it up and close to the recent times, where the 100 EMA is kind of critical when it comes to kind of knowing whether you're in a bullish situation or a bearish situation, right? So, when looking at the 100 and the 200 EMA, which is one of my favorite crossings to kind of know whether you're bullish or bearish type of situation, it can give you kind of early signals before a pump may or may not happen, or a dump that may or may not happen. So right now, when you're looking at the screen, we're only looking at the 1 hour, but whether you're looking at the 1 hour, 1 day, or whatever you're looking at, you want to look for EMA crossings, and the bigger EMAs is the ones that you really want to watch out for right now. And just looking in this little time period, you'll notice two little sections of time, the 100 EMA and the 200 EMA, where they crossed up, and you can kind of see, or where they crossed down or continued going down, denied each other over here, or when it crossed up over here. Watching for EMA cross-ups, cross-downs, especially with the 100 and 200, which is kind of like my favorite cross-up. You can look at the other EMAs. You can look at EMAs like 30 and the 50 if they start crossing with each other, and we'll look at some examples a little bit after on that. But the EMA crossings are low-key important to like kind of know, like, give yourself like, hey, you know what, this might be a good time to long or short, right? So when we had the run up up until the end of June, when it was getting obviously a little bit bullish, right? And we can draw our kind of line of best fit for a trend line, right? We had that nice little trend line there. Remember, when you're connecting trend lines, you want to find at least 2 points of data, and then extend it as far as you can and do a line of best fit. There also would have been, a theoretical trend line here. There would have been a theoretical trend line there, right? But outside of trend lines right now, which isn't what we're talking about, when we approached kind of this first kind of end of June breakout over here on the 1 hour chart, what we noticed here is that the 100 EMA came close to trying to break over, but then we saw deny and a continuation down, right? So without the 100 EMA crossing above it, that didn't give us like the nice kind of like, ooh, I'm feeling good about this signal that it could go higher, right? So after the attempt of the 100 EMA to cross over the 200 EMA, which was denied over here, we saw a considerable pullback down, right? So now looking at a few days later, when we saw that 100 EMA cross above here, this was kind of a big signal in the market to be like, you know what, it may not be a terrible time to toss up along. Like right when it started crossing up, you had a bit of time frame here, right? Look at the. Let's kind of zoom back out around here, right? You had about what is this? From about that was about a 9 hour period. Remember, we're on the little time frame charts here. You had a little bit of a time period there to really kind of get yourself a confirmation that there was going to be a greater pullback. Wow, we're seeing quite a bit of a drop right now. Don't worry, this lesson will be fast. We'll be back to watching the market in no time. So when we saw that crossover here, that was a really big indicator for us to kind of be like, you know what, this shit probably is bullish, right? You would have had, or I mean, already just to begin with before that, we know that the 100 EMA, if you can go above it, whether it's the 1 hour, 4 hour, 1 day, the higher you go, the stronger the signal is, right? The moment you kind of saw like a little bit of kind of holding here, holding here, holding here, holding here, right? Even up until you know, you had the confirmation over here, right? This is the like lagging confirmation. But if you're someone that doesn't want to bet on, you know, gamble or whatever, and you're kind of like waiting for the right signal in a sense, you know, you had ample time here of when it was ranging above the 100 EMA, above the 200 EMA, which itself is a bullish signal of its own, right? But the moment that 100 EMA crossed over here, in my opinion, that was go time for the market makers, right? They're like, oh shit, let's load this shit up and start running it up. You started to see that 9 EMA trend also being built beforehand. Not only was it staying above the 100, it was staying, you saw that 9999, a little dip below, but you can kind of see, even on the hourly, which isn't a very long time frame, that the 9 EMA was holding really well. And the moment we saw that 100 EMA cross above the 200 EMA, that's when we know the shit was going to, I guess, hit the fan or at least go up, right? So up until that point, right, we held the 200 EMA, held the 200 EMA, and just like on the last VOD, or the last time we did part 1 of the EMA, the 100 EMA is always the first signal of something to go bearish if you start going below it, and also the first signal that it could be going bullish the first time it goes above it, right? So right now we had a little bit of a bullish breakout over the last few days. And then once we saw that break over here, you can kind of see once it broke that 100 EMA, it kind of found support at 200. But we always know that the moment you break the 100, that's kind of like when that bullish sentiment or the bullish trend is really starting to break down, right? And then here right now, what are we seeing? Now we saw a break below the 200, reattempt at the 200, reattempt at the 200, and we're continuing to see it down. And now we're waiting for a kind of a bearish confirmation indicator, kind of like we saw above here, right? When we started going above the 100 EMA, 200 EMA around this region, right? We were kind of waiting for this confirmation right there for it to kind of continue going up. And right now what we're waiting for is to see what's going to happen probably somewhere in the next 12 hours because it's an hourly chart. That it can't cross below, because if we see that it maybe bounces up, this could be just a bamboozle, and then they send it back up. And then if you opened up a short right here, you think you hit the bottom, or you think you shorted a good top, or not, you didn't short the bottom, but you thought you shorted a good area, but realistically you just might be shorting kind of a range area, and you might get fucked, right? And ideally, where the ideal area to start shorting would have been somewhere around this region, when it started to go below the 100 EMA, and you know, if you're looking like, oh, where do I set my stop losses or something, right? Well, you can set your stop losses somewhere above the 100 EMA, because you know, if you fall below the 100 EMA and then you hold the 200 EMA and it starts crossing back up, right? Then that's probably a good time to like, you know, maybe get a stop loss, or maybe kind of have a range of a stop loss somewhere around here before it dropped off, that little thing. That's how you can kind of use EMAs to your advantage as well, to kind of set up stop loss and set up entry point positions. But either way, that's just on the hourly, right? So I just wanted to kind of show you that, a really fast indicator of what would happen. But if you're more of a long-term trader, right? Let's go to the 3-day. The 3-day is a sick indicator, a really, really sick indicator, because the same kind of occurred. Actually, was it 3 days? Actually, sorry, the daily. Let's go to the daily. So back in July last year, so this is kind of looking in July 2021, we were bearish for a long period of time, right? So remember what I was just talking about on the 1 hour? What we're kind of watching for is to see, like, is this going to kind of, what I like to say, kiss up? Or is it going to break down type of deal? So when we were in July last year, if we take kind of the same theory approach to the 100 EMA right now on the bigger time frames, right? Look, wouldn't you look at that? And even though we were bearish, right, we saw that deny, we fell below the 100 EMA there back in May 20. You can see what kind of shit show was right after it hit 100. It found support right before that, did a little bit of a bounce, and then it died, right? And then right there, when it crossed that 100 EMA right below, that was kind of like your signal, okay. And of course, when it breaks the 200, anytime it breaks the fucking 200 EMA, it's kind of fucked up already. Let me just delete that, right? So, we started ranging below it, right? But what the bears back then, or the bulls, or whoever, the people, the market makers, Binance, Sam from FTX, whatever, were kind of looking for back then was, can the 100 EMA cross below the daily right here, right? And wouldn't you be surprised that they were able to fucking hold it, and bam, it bounced right off of that, and you can see what kind of, like, bounce you can get if that 100 EMA holds. Just because you're below the 100 EMA and the 200 EMA, if you don't get that cross, you're not as bearish or as bullish as you think you are, depending on the situation. So after that, the daily saw what we saw, and where was the nice little confirmation that shit was going to become even more bearish around this period was around this January mark, where that 100 EMA crossed below. And then we just started, we were ranging below the 100 EMA already since like December 7th on the daily. And then we retested it, broke down more. We had a confirmation of the breakdown here. If it wanted to like truly get bullish at this point, like, just imagine you didn't know all this future data right now, right? All you saw was this, right? The moment you saw that retest of the 100, 200 EMA around this region when we were at that 46K, which was that nice little melt up that we had around February to like Marchish, right? That was the period where you just started to seeing that this was probably going to be more bearish than we could fucking imagine, because we kept denying the 200 and the 100 on the daily. Had a fake breakout here, but even with this fake breakout here, we knew that something wasn't right, because this cross down here, if you really go back in the data, if we go back to 2018 had this exact same pattern, and this is how we knew back in, when we were making these tweets, we were talking about this back in April, and this is where we opened up our position as well for Ethereum, not Bitcoin, but Ethereum position, because we opened our original Ethereum position on April 3rd. We knew that this area was most likely a fake out, because if we go really back in time, let's go a little back in time so I can show you guys the same kind of setup pattern, because the history repeats more than you think. History repeats more than you think. Back in 2018, we also had this situation where we crossed below it, went a little bit above the 200 EMA, and then we just capitulated. Like, no matter what, the moment that EMA crossed down over there, it was absolutely a shit show. So using that to your advantage on a longer time frame, or a longer time frame mindset, can be pretty advantageous, just to know, like, hey, as long as that 100 EMA doesn't cross above that 200 EMA right there, you can use that to your advantage to kind of see what's up. Like, you can see right now, it's a total fucking shit show, right, on the daily. Outside of being below the 9 EMA, outside of all this stuff, we are so far away from the 100 EMA. We are so far away from the 200 EMA. Bitcoin, if it wanted to, could bounce to 34K. Around that region. Let's just kind of imagine it's kind of stringing along like this. We could go back to like 31, 34K and still deny, and it wouldn't be fucking bullish. You know what I'm saying? It still fucking wouldn't be bullish. Even if we went back to 32K, 34K, just the fact that at that point, to be fair, if we were to get a little bit of bounce, the 100 EMA wouldn't be looking like that. To be fair, it'd be probably more like this type of deal. But if that 100 EMA, if you started to see a bounce, and we kind of saw that cross over the 200 EMA, then maybe we could start seeing something become bullish. But at this current point in time in the market, even on something like the daily or whatever, it's so far away that 34K, or if you kind of, you can never truly predict how the EMAs are going to go. You can kind of just draw it predictively. I don't really recommend it overall, but you can kind of gauge on that how it can do. So that's one of the major EMAs kind of crossings that you should probably be watching for. And you can see it on the lower time frames too. You can see it on the 22-minute. You can kind of break it down on the lower time frames and try to like map it out to the higher time frames. But in general, the 100, 200 is something that you should kind of keep in track. And of course, if we like break it down, if we let's kind of stop looking at the bigger indicators, let's start looking at those smaller ones like the 30 and the 50. The same thing can be said about the 30 and the 50. The moment you start seeing, since the 30 and the 50 are like kind of first gatekeepers of bullish or bearishness. If you haven't watched our first lesson, you can for sure check that out yourself. But the same kind of applies. If the lower time, if it doesn't matter which number, if you take the 30 and the 50, or if you take the 100 and the 200, right? What you're looking for is for crosses, and you're looking for the bullish crosses, right? When you saw the 30 cross over the 50 over here, right? But I really like the 100 and the 200. That one kind of gives me more confidence, right? If you use like the 30 and the 50, there's such a tight EMA. Like, you're only adding on an extra 20, right, to the EMA. It's not that big of a difference, right? That's like I don't know what the percentage of that is off the top of my head. Sounds like it's about 25 to 30%. But it's not a big percent, flip crease when you're looking at EMAs. So that's why I'm a big fan of looking at the 100, 200. You can use the lower time frames to your advantage for sure. I'd probably use something closer to like the 9 and the 30, right? You can mix and match and see if you can find your own patterns, right? There's so many little patterns out in the world that not everybody knows about, right? So if we're only looking at the 9 and the 30, sorry about the coughing. I don't even know where the fuck that came from today. I literally haven't been coughing all day till like I woke up from my nap. So who knows? You can kind of see like when the 9, when you see like when the 9 starts crossing below the 30, you can kind of see that or the 9 crosses above the 30. You can kind of see that there's patterns within it. I wouldn't use it on something like the 22-minute because it's so fucking fast. Right, you can see like you wouldn't really get super great entries off of this. It can kind of help you. I wouldn't use it as entries, obviously, but you can use it a little bit as like a confirmation to maybe your higher time frame play. So if we go to something like the 4-hour right now, that's a little bit better. If using the EMA strategy, like the EMA crossing strategy, on the low time frames, isn't gonna be that. Anytime you do anything on the low time frame, to be fair, isn't that very accurate. So you always want to kind of zoom out and kind of look at the higher time frames and be like, okay, this is what it is, right? So if we're looking at the daily or the 4-hour right here, you can kind of see when the 9 EMA started crossing below the 30 EMA, you can already see that there was some violent reactions, and then we started trending below the 9, trending below the 9, trending below the 9. The 9 tried to break over the 30, 9 tried to break over the 30, 9 tried to break over the 30. It was like a consistent failures down here until you actually saw like a visible like big candle that actually broke above it. But you can kind of see, you can get theoretical false signals from this. Like right here, this would have been a false breakout signal that might have not worked out in your favor. I mean, you could have theoretically, like from here, it'd be 29,700, but calculating the top, right, that's the hard part, right? And that's probably, if we had Keltner channels right now, which we won't go over too hard, the Keltner channels could give you an advantage, which will be our next lesson, probably on Friday. Yeah, probably on Friday, where you can use this to your advantage, right? So, looking at this right now, right, this is kind of what you want to like look for, right? Look at the EMA crossing, see how they can be advantageous to you, see if you can find any patterns. Pattern finding is the key. If you can backtest your idea and be like, you know what, this hits about 60% of the time, 80% of the time, right? Whichever. That's why I like the 100, 200, because it's a little bit more longer outlook, which gives you a little bit wider range to do these things, right? So So that's about it in regards to EMA crossings. Definitely check out the 100, 200 crossings, backtest that idea a little bit more, and use that to your advantage. And make sure to check out our Part 1 VOD if you haven't. Part 1 VOD if you've never used Twitch TV, which is this right here right now. You can click on my name. Wrong thing I did there. You can click on my name, go to videos. Right down here you got basic explanation of EMAs, basic TA setup, how to naked RSI. I'm going to take this video down because it's just